They looked at her cheap hoodie and beat-up sedan and saw nothing but a target. They laughed when she told them to check her badge number. They mocked her when she warned them that a storm was coming. But what Officer Greg Vance and his buddies didn't know was that the woman in handcuffs wasn't just a defendant. She was the director of the FBI, deep undercover. And by the time the truth hit the precinct, careers wouldn't just be over. They would be incinerated. This is the story of how arrogance met authority and the brutal karma that followed. You do not want to miss this. The rain was coming down in sheets on Interstate 95, turning the Virginia asphalt into a slick, reflective mirror. Alana Hayes gripped the steering wheel of the dented 2008 Honda Civic, her knuckles white, not from fear, but from exhaustion. It had been a 6-month deep-cover operation, dismantling a trafficking ring in Baltimore, and she was finally on her way back to D.C. She wasn't wearing her usual tailored pantsuit or the sleek blazer that commanded respect in the halls of the J. Edgar Hoover building. Tonight, she was dressed as Keisha, her undercover persona, ripped jeans, a faded oversized hoodie, and hair tied back in a messy fraying bun. She was tired. She wanted a hot shower and a glass of wine. What she got instead was the blinding flash of red and blue lights filling her rearview mirror. Alana sighed, checking her speedometer. She was doing 55 in a 55 zone. Her registration was clean, albeit tied to a shell corporation used by the Bureau. There was no reason for the stop. She pulled over to the shoulder, the gravel crunching under her tires. In the side mirror, she watched 2 officers exit a pristine patrol SUV. The jurisdiction marked on the door was Oak Creek, a notorious speed trap town just outside the Federal Beltway. The lead officer, a man with a buzz cut and a jawline that looked like it was carved out of granite and arrogance, strutted toward her window. His name tag read Vance. His partner, a younger, nervous-looking rookie named Higgins, hung back by the rear bumper, hand resting on his holster. Alana rolled down the window. The smell of rain and ozone filled the car. "License and registration," Vance barked, skipping the pleasantries. He shone his flashlight directly into her eyes, blinding her momentarily. "Good evening to you too, officer," Alana said, her voice calm. She had faced down cartel bosses and serial killers. A small-town traffic cop with an ego complex didn't register as a threat, merely a nuisance. "May I ask why I was pulled over?" "I said license and registration," Vance repeated, louder this time, leaning in. He looked around the interior of the beat-up Honda, his nose wrinkling as if he smelled something foul. "And keep your hands where I can see them." Alana moved slowly. She knew the drill. Any sudden movement could be fatal with an officer this agitated. She retrieved the documents from the glove box and handed them over. Vance snatched them. He glanced at the ID, a fake Virginia license under the name Keisha Freeman, and then back at her. A smirk curled the corner of his lip. "Keisha," he said, testing the name with a mocking lilt. "You're a long way from home, aren't you? Baltimore address. What are you doing in Oak Creek at 2 in the morning?" "I'm driving home from work," Alana lied smoothly. "Work?" Vance laughed, a short, sharp bark of sound. "In that outfit? What kind of work? You working the corners?" The disrespect was instantaneous and sharp. Alana's eyes narrowed. This was exactly the kind of behavior Internal Affairs had been trying to root out for decades. Yet here it was, alive and well on a rainy roadside. "I work in security," Alana said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming colder. "And I would appreciate it if you treated me with the same respect I'm showing you, Officer Vance." Vance's face darkened. He wasn't used to suspects talking back, especially not black women in beat-up cars. He turned to Higgins. "You hear that, rookie? She wants respect." He turned back to Alana. "Step out of the car. For what reason? Alana asked, gripping the wheel. I haven't committed a crime. I wasn't speeding. My tail lights are working. I smell marijuana, Vance lied. He said it with such casual ease that it was clear he had used this line 1,000 times before. Alana didn't smoke. The car had been scrubbed clean by Bureau Forensics 3 days ago. There was absolutely no odor. That is a lie, Alana stated firmly. Officer, I'm going to ask you once to check my license plate again. Run it through the federal database, not just your local DMV. Vance chuckled, shaking his head. Federal database? Who do you think you are? You think because you watch a few episodes of Law and Order, you know how the system works? Get out, now! He didn't wait for her to comply. Vance yanked the door open. He grabbed Alana by the wrist and hauled her out into the rain. She stumbled, her sneakers slipping in the mud. But she didn't fight back. Resistance would only give him the excuse he was desperate for. Turn around! Hands behind your back! Alana complied. The cold steel of the handcuffs clicked tight against her wrists. Too tight. Officer Vance, Alana said, her face pressed against the wet metal of her own car. You are making a mistake. A career-ending mistake. I am advising you to call your watch commander right now. Shut up, Vance spat. He patted her down, his hands lingering aggressively during the search. He pulled out her wallet, tossing it onto the hood of the car. Then he found it. Her badge. But it wasn't her FBI director badge. That was secured in a biometric safe in the trunk. This was her undercover badge, a generic private security laminate that looked cheap. Vance held it up to the light and burst out laughing. Look at this, Higgins, Vance shouted over the rain. She's a mall cop, private security. That explains the attitude. She thinks she's one of us. Higgins stepped forward, looking uncomfortable. Greg, maybe we should just write the ticket and let her go. The car looks clean. Clean? Vance scoffed. This car screams drug mule. We're taking her in. Impound the vehicle. We'll tear it apart back at the station. I bet we find a brick of heroin in the spare tire. Alana stood tall, the rain plastering her hair to her face. She looked Vance dead in the eye. Officer Vance, my name is Alana Hayes. I am asking you to look inside the glove compartment, behind the false panel on the left side. There is a number there. Call it. Vance leaned in close, his breath smelling of stale coffee and tobacco. You don't give orders here, Keisha. You're just another criminal trying to bluff her way out of a cell. You want to talk? You can talk to the judge on Monday. Until then, you're mine. He shoved her toward the squad car. Alana didn't scream. She didn't struggle. She simply memorized his face. She memorized his badge number, 49922. She memorized the look of glee in his eyes as he humiliated her. As she was shoved into the cramped back seat of the cruiser, the hard plastic seat digging into her back, Alana Hayes closed her eyes and took a deep breath. You want a war, she thought. Okay. You've got one. The drive to the Oak Creek precinct was 20 minutes of torture. Vance turned up the radio, blasting heavy metal music to drown out any attempt she might make to speak. He drove aggressively, swerving slightly, brake-checking to make her toss around in the back seat without a seatbelt. So, Vance shouted over the music, glancing in the rearview mirror. How much do you make a night? Enough to afford a lawyer? Oh, wait, you'll get a public defender. Maybe they can plead you down to possession. Alana stayed silent. She was running the logistics in her head. Her phone had been confiscated, but her watch, a battered-looking digital Casio, was actually a high-tech field transponder. It had a panic beacon, but using it would bring down a SWAT team and blow her cover for good. She decided to wait. She wanted to see how far this rot went. They arrived at the station, a brick building that looked like a fortress. Vance hauled her out, parading her through the back entrance. The booking area was busy. A few other officers looked up. Some smirked when they saw Vance dragging a woman in handcuffs. "What you got there, Vance?" the desk sergeant, a heavy-set man named Miller, asked. "Another one for the collection, Miller," Vance announced proudly. "DUI, resisting arrest, and probable cause for trafficking. Found her on the I-95. Gave me attitude the whole way." "I was not drunk," Alana said, her voice cutting through the noise, "and I did not resist." "Add disorderly conduct to the sheet," Vance said, winking at Miller. "They processed her. Fingerprints, mugshot. They took her shoelaces and her hoodie strings. Through it all, Alana remained eerily calm. This unnerved rookie Higgins, who was watching from the corner. "Greg," Higgins whispered, as Vance typed up the report. "She's too quiet. Most of them are screaming by now. Are you sure about this?" "Positive," Vance said, typing "suspect was belligerent" into the report. "She's just stunned. She knows she's caught." Vance walked over to the holding cell where Alana was sitting on the concrete bench. He grabbed the bars and rattled them. "Get comfortable, Keisha," he sneered. "I'm going on break. When I come back, we're going to have a long talk about where you hid the drugs." Alana looked up. Her eyes were dark, intense, and filled with a terrifying intelligence. "Officer Vance," she said softly, "do you enjoy your pension?" Vance laughed. "What? Your pension? Your badge? Your freedom? Do you enjoy them? Are you threatening me?" Vance unlocked the cell door and stepped inside, towering over her. "You want to add threatening an officer to the list?" "It's not a threat," Alana said. "It's a forecast, because in about 1 hour, the phone on Sergeant Miller's desk is going to ring. And when he picks it up, he's going to turn very, very pale, and then he's going to look at you." Vance stared at her. For a split second, a flicker of doubt crossed his mind. She didn't sound like a junkie. She sounded educated, powerful, but his ego crushed the doubt instantly. "You're crazy," Vance muttered. He stepped out and slammed the cell door shut. "Crazy and guilty." He walked away, laughing with Miller. Alana waited until they were out of sight. Then she looked down at her Casio watch. They hadn't taken it, assuming it was worthless junk. She pressed the 2 side buttons simultaneously and held them for 5 seconds. A tiny red light on the face pulsed 3 times. The signal was sent, 400 miles away, in the Strategic Information Operations Center at FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. A red alert flashed on the main screen. "Agent Distress Beacon, Director Hayes. Location, Oak Creek Police Department." The room went silent. The deputy director, a man named David Ross, stood up, his coffee cup falling to the floor and shattering. "Get the chopper," Ross commanded, his voice trembling with rage. "And get the HRT team. Now." Back in the cell, Alana leaned her head against the cold wall and smiled. The storm wasn't coming. It was here. The holding cell was cold, but the interrogation room was stiflingly hot. It was a deliberate tactic, one of the oldest in the book. They cranked the thermostat to make the suspect sweat, to make them uncomfortable and desperate for water. Alana sat at the metal table, her hands still cuffed behind her back, a violation of protocol for a non-violent suspect in a secure room. Officer Vance entered, followed by Sergeant Miller. Vance had removed his jacket, rolling up his sleeves to reveal thick, tattooed forearms. He carried a heavy phone book and a bottle of water, which he placed on the table just out of Alana's reach. "Thirsty?" Vance asked, sitting down opposite her. Alana didn't answer. She was counting the seconds. Her distress signal had been active for 12 minutes. The response time for a code red on a director-level asset was typically under 20 minutes within the DC radius. She just had to survive the next 8 minutes. "We searched your car," Vance lied, leaning back in his chair. "Found traces of cocaine in the upholstery, and the K9 unit is on its way. Once the dog signals, we tear that piece of junk apart. You're looking at 10 to 20 years, Keisha." "You didn't find cocaine," Alana said, her voice steady. "And you didn't call a K9 unit because Oak Creek doesn't have one on the night shift. You borrow yours from the county, and the log shows the county K9 is currently assisting on a bust in Richmond." Vance blinked. The silence in the room stretched, heavy and dangerous. Miller shifted uncomfortably against the wall. "How do you know that?" Miller asked, his brow furrowing. "Because I pay attention," Alana said. "Unlike you. You're sloppy, gentlemen. You didn't read me my Miranda rights. You haven't allowed me a phone call. You've kept me cuffed in a secure room. Every second of this is a civil rights violation under Title 42, Section 1983 of the U.S. Code." Vance slammed his hand on the table. The noise echoed off the cinder block walls. "Stop playing lawyer," Vance roared. "You're a nobody. You're a statistic. You think because you know some legal mumbo-jumbo you can scare us? This is my house. There are no cameras in here, Keisha. Do you understand what that means?" He stood up and walked around the table, standing behind her. Alana could feel his heat, the threat radiating off him. "It means," Vance whispered in her ear, "that if you fall out of your chair and break your nose, it's just an accident. It means if you resist and we have to subdue you, no one sees it." "Greg, take it easy," Miller warned softly. "Let's just book her and wait for the public defender." "No," Vance snapped, turning on his superior. "She disrespected me on the road. She thinks she's better than us. I want a confession, Miller. I want her to admit she's running drugs." He grabbed the back of Alana's chair and yanked it backward, tilting her dangerously. Alana's core muscles tightened, keeping her balance, but the cuffs bit into her wrists. "Confess," Vance spat. "Tell me who you work for." Alana looked up at the ceiling, then locked eyes with Miller. "I work for the people of the United States," she said clearly, "and specifically, I oversee the investigation of corrupt police departments that use traffic stops to extort citizens and launder money. Does that sound familiar, Sergeant Miller?" Miller's face went pale. "What did you say?" "I know about the asset forfeiture scam you're running," Alana continued, pressing her advantage. "I know you pull over out-of-state drivers, confiscate their cash under suspicion of drug activity, and then never file charges so you can keep the money for the department. I know you bought that boat parked in your driveway with stolen funds, Miller." The room went deathly silent. Vance looked at Miller. Miller looked at Vance. The air was thick with panic. "She's a plant," Miller whispered, his voice trembling. "Greg, she's internal affairs, or state police." "She's nothing!" Vance yelled, though his eyes showed fear now. "She's guessing. She's bluffing." Vance grabbed Alana by the front of her hoodie, hauling her up from the chair. He raised his fist. "Who are you?" he screamed. "Tell me who you are." "I told you," Alana said, her voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "But you didn't listen. Now it's too late." At that exact moment, a low, thrumming sound began to vibrate the building. It started as a hum, rattling the water bottle on the table, and quickly grew into a deafening roar. The light fixture above them began to shake. "What is that?" Miller asked, looking at the ceiling. "That," Alana said, "is the cavalry." Outside the Oak Creek police station, the night sky had turned into day. 3 black MH-60M Black Hawk helicopters, bearing no markings other than the faint tail numbers, hovered just 50 feet above the parking lot. Their floodlights bathed the brick building in blinding white light. The wind from their rotors tore shingles off the precinct roof and sent trash cans skittering across the pavement. On the ground, the scene was chaotic. 6 black Chevrolet Suburbans screeched to a halt at the front entrance, blocking the patrol cars. Doors flew open, and 12 tactical operators from the FBI's Hostage Rescue Team, HRT, spilled out. They weren't wearing standard windbreakers. They were in full heavy armor, carrying M4 carbines with laser sights, their faces covered by ballistic masks. Inside the station, the front desk exploded into panic. "What's happening?" Rookie Higgins shouted, ducking as the windows rattled violently. The front doors were kicked open with such force that the glass shattered. "Federal agents, drop your weapons, get on the ground, now!" The voice was amplified, booming through the small lobby. The HRT team moved with fluid, terrifying precision. Red laser dots danced across the chests of the 3 officers in the lobby. Higgins threw his hands up immediately, dropping to his knees. "Don't shoot! Don't shoot!" The other officers followed suit. There was no fighting this. This wasn't a raid, it was an invasion. Following the tactical team, a man in a sharp grey suit strode into the lobby. Deputy Director David Ross looked like a man on a warpath. His face was a mask of fury. Beside him was the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. "Secure the building," Ross barked. "I want everyone in cuffs. No one leaves. Cut the phone lines. Seize the servers." "Who is in charge here?" the U.S. Attorney demanded. Chief Henderson, a balding man who had been sleeping in his office, stumbled out into the hallway, buttoning his shirt. He froze when he saw the laser sights pointed at his chest. I am," Henderson stammered. "I'm Chief Henderson. What is the meaning of this? You can't just barge in here." "Shut your mouth," Ross interrupted, walking right up to the chief. "Where is she?" "Who?" "The woman your officers brought in 30 minutes ago. Where is Director Hayes?" Henderson looked confused. We don't have a Director Hayes. We just have a DUI suspect, a Keisha Freeman." Ross grabbed Henderson by the tie and shoved him against the wall. "If you have touched one hair on her head, Henderson, I will make sure you never see sunlight again. Take us to her, now." Back in the interrogation room, Vance and Miller were frozen. The sound of boots stomping down the hallway was getting louder. "Greg," Miller whimpered. "What did you do?" Vance released Alana, backing away. He looked at the door. He looked at his gun. "Don't even think about it," Alana said calmly. "If you touch that holster, you die." The door to the interrogation room didn't open. It was blown off its hinges. A ram hit the lock, and the heavy steel door swung inward, slamming against the wall with a deafening crash. "FBI, get down! Down!" Flashbangs weren't used. The room was too small, but the sudden influx of armored bodies was disorienting enough. Miller dropped to the floor instantly, sobbing. Vance stood paralyzed, his hands half raised. 2 HRT operators tackled Vance, driving him into the concrete floor with bone-crunching force. They zip-tied his hands behind his back before he could take a breath. Deputy Director Ross stepped into the room. He ignored the cops. He went straight to Alana. "Ma'am," Ross said, his voice softening instantly. "Are you injured?" Alana stood up. She rolled her neck, working out the stiffness. She held out her wrists. "Get these off me, David," she said. An operator produced a key and unlocked the handcuffs. Alana rubbed her wrists, looking at the red welts Vance had left there. She looked down at Vance, who was pressed cheek first into the dirty floor, looking up at her with wide, terrified eyes. "Director," Vance whispered, the blood draining from his face. "Director of what?" Alana didn't answer him yet. She accepted a jacket that Ross handed her, an FBI windbreaker with bold yellow letters on the back. She zipped it up, covering her hoodie. The transformation was psychological as much as physical. Keisha, the suspect, was gone. Director Alana Hayes had returned. She turned to Ross. "Secure the perimeter. I want the dashcam footage from Officer Vance's vehicle downloaded immediately before accidentally gets deleted. I want every body cam in this station seized, and get a forensics team in here to sweep my car." "Yes, Director," Ross said. Alana then turned her attention to Vance. She crouched down so she was face to face with him on the floor. "You asked me who I was," Alana said softly. "I'm the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And you, Officer Vance, are the luckiest man alive." Vance blinked, sweat dripping into his eyes. "Lucky? I'm arrested." "You're lucky," Alana corrected, "because my team got here before you threw that punch. Because if you had struck me, you wouldn't be going to federal prison. You'd be going to the morgue." She stood up. "Get him out of my sight." The next hour was a blur of efficiency that the Oak Creek Police Department had never witnessed. The station was turned inside out. FBI agents were boxing up files, cloning hard drives, and interviewing staff. Alana sat in the chief's office, now her temporary command post. She held an ice pack to her wrist. Chief Henderson sat across from her, not in his chair, but on a folding chair brought in for him. He was sweating profusely. "Director Hayes," Henderson stammered. "I assure you, I had no idea. Officer Vance he's a rogue element. One bad apple." Alana slammed a file folder onto the desk. "Don't insult my intelligence, Chief. We've been seizing your records for 45 minutes. We've already found a separate ledger for cash seizures that doesn't match the official city budget. Vance isn't a bad apple. He's the top earner in a criminal enterprise that you are running." Henderson opened his mouth to argue, but the U.S. attorney stepped in. "Save it for your lawyer, Chief. We're charging you with racketeering, conspiracy to deprive civil rights, and wire fraud. And that's just to start." Alana stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the bullpen. She saw Rookie Higgins sitting on a bench, his head in his hands. He wasn't cuffed yet. "Bring me the rookie," Alana ordered. 2 agents escorted Higgins into the office. He looked like a child, terrified and shaking. "Agent Higgins," Alana said. "It's Officer Mom," he squeaked. "Sit down." Higgins sat. He couldn't meet her eyes. "You were there," Alana said. "On the roadside. You knew there was no smell of marijuana. You knew I wasn't speeding." Higgins choked up. "I wanted to say something. I told him to let you go." "But you didn't stop him," Alana said sternly. "You watched him manufacture a reason to arrest me. You watched him assault me." "Silence is complicity, Higgins." "I know," Higgins whispered, tears leaking from his eyes. "I was scared. Vance, he runs this shift. If you go against him, you get fired, or worse." Alana studied him. She saw the fear, but she also saw that he hadn't participated in the mockery. He was weak, not malicious. "You have a choice, right now," Alana said. "You can go to jail with Vance and the chief. You'll lose your badge, your freedom, and your future." Higgins looked up, desperate. "I don't want that. Please." "Then you talk," Alana said. "You tell us everything. Every time Vance planted drugs. Every time Miller stole money. Every time the chief looked the other way. You become a witness for the federal government. You wear a wire if we need you to. You burn this whole department to the ground to save yourself." Higgins took a breath. He looked at the chief, who was glaring at him. Then he looked at Alana. "I'll talk," Higgins said. "I'll tell you everything. Vance has a stash house, a storage unit on 5th Street. That's where they keep the stuff they steal before they sell it." Alana smiled, cold and satisfied. "Good. Get a stenographer in here." She walked out of the office and into the main booking area. Vance was being led out in leg shackles and handcuffs. He was no longer the strutting, arrogant predator. He was slumped over, defeated, wearing an orange jumpsuit that had been retrieved from his own supply closet. As he shuffled past Alana, he stopped. "It wasn't personal," Vance mumbled, trying one last manipulation. "I was just doing my job." Alana stepped into his personal space. "That's the problem, Vance," she said, her voice loud enough for the entire room to hear. "You think destroying lives is your job. You think because you have a badge, you're a god. But you forgot one thing." "What's that?" Vance asked. "There's always a bigger predator," Alana said. "Take him away." As they dragged Vance out the door to the waiting federal transport van, camera flashes erupted. The press had arrived. Alana watched from the doorway, her face impassive. Deputy Director Ross walked up beside her. "We found the dash cam footage. It's all there. The racial slurs, the illegal search. It's a slam dunk, Alana." "Good," Alana said. "But this isn't over." "What do you mean? We got the chief. We got Vance. We got Miller." "This goes higher," Alana said, staring at the rain falling outside. "Higgins mentioned a storage unit. Small-town cops don't move that kind of volume without help. They have a distributor, someone protecting them from the state level." She turned to Ross. "Get the car ready, David. We're not going back to D.C. yet. We're going to pay a visit to the mayor." Ross smirked. "I love it when you get angry." "I'm not angry," Alana said, pulling her hood up, but this time it was the FBI windbreaker hood. "I'm just getting started." The rain had stopped, but the storm over Oak Creek was just intensifying. Based on Rookie Higgins's confession, a convoy of FBI SUVs tore through the quiet, affluent suburbs of the county. They weren't heading to a police station this time. They were heading to Store All Self-Storage on the edge of town, and then to the mayor's estate. Alana Hayes sat in the lead vehicle, reviewing the digital warrant she had just received from a federal judge. Higgins had spilled everything. The storage unit wasn't just a closet for stolen bikes. It was an armory and a bank vault. "We're 2 minutes out," Agent Ross said from the driver's seat. "Higgins said Unit 404. He said it's booby-trapped." "Then we blow the door," Alana said coldly. "I'm done playing games." They arrived at the storage facility. The metal gate was rammed open by the lead SUV. Agents swarmed Unit 404. Using a remote charge, they blew the rolling door off its tracks. When the smoke cleared, the agents' flashlights revealed the scale of the corruption. It looked like a cartel warehouse. Stacks of cash shrink-wrapped in plastic. Bins full of jewelry, watches, and electronics seized from suspects and never logged. And in the corner, crates of unregistered firearms. "Bag it all," Alana ordered. "But find the paperwork. Men like Vance and Chief Henderson are greedy, but they're also paranoid. They keep records." It took 10 minutes. An agent found a waterproof safe hidden under a pile of stolen laptops. They drilled it open. Inside was a black ledger. Alana flipped through it, her eyes widened. "It's not just the police," she whispered. "Look at the payouts. Big Bird, the architect, City Hall." She pointed to a recurring monthly payment of $15,000 going to AS. "Arthur Sterling," Ross said, recognizing the initials of the Oak Creek mayor. "The law and order mayor himself." "He campaigned on cleaning up the streets," Alana said, her voice dripping with disgust. "Turns out he was just clearing out the competition." She closed the ledger. "Let's go pay the mayor a visit. He's hosting the policeman's ball tonight at his mansion, isn't he?" "Yes, ma'am." "Perfect," Alana smiled. "I love a captive audience." The mayor's mansion was a spectacle of wealth. Expensive cars lined the driveway. Inside, the town's elite were drinking champagne and toasting to their safety. Mayor Arthur Sterling, a silver-haired man with a perfect smile, stood on a small stage, holding a microphone. "We are a safe community," Sterling beamed, "because we support our boys in blue. We don't let the chaos of the city infect Oak Creek." Applause erupted. Then the double doors of the ballroom swung open. The music died. The applause faltered. Alana Hayes walked in. She wasn't wearing an evening gown. She was wearing her FBI windbreaker, her badge hanging around her neck, flanked by 6 armed federal agents. "Mayor Sterling!" Alana's voice cut through the silence like a knife. Sterling laughed nervously. "Well, this is unexpected. Who are you?" "I'm the chaos you were worried about," Alana said, walking straight to the stage. She climbed the stairs, the guests parting for her like the Red Sea. She snatched the microphone from the mayor's hand. "Ladies and gentlemen, the party is over," Alana announced to the room. "Please put down your drinks and step away from Mayor Sterling, unless you want to be named as co-conspirators in a RICO indictment." The room gasped. Sterling's face turned purple. "You can't do this," Sterling hissed. "I know people. I play golf with senators." "That's nice," Alana said, clicking a pair of handcuffs onto her belt. "You can tell them all about it on visiting day." She spun him around. The guests watched in horror as their beloved mayor was slammed against the podium and cuffed. "Arthur Sterling, you are under arrest for money laundering, racketeering, and conspiracy," Alana recited. "And for the record, your boys in blue are already in custody." As they marched the mayor out past the stunned socialites, Alana paused by a table where a woman, the mayor's wife, stood trembling. "He bought that diamond necklace with stolen money, Mom," Alana said softly. "We're going to need that back." 6 months later. The federal courthouse in Alexandria, Virginia, was packed. The press called it the Blue Wall Trial. It was the most high-profile police corruption case in a decade. Officer Greg Vance sat at the defense table. He looked different. He had lost 30 pounds. His buzz cut had grown out into patchy, graying hair. He wore a cheap suit provided by his public defender. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a twitchy, hollow look. He had refused a plea deal. His ego wouldn't let him admit guilt. He was convinced a jury would side with a cop over a Fed. The prosecutor was Alana Hayes herself. She had taken a leave from the director's chair to prosecute this case personally. She wanted to look him in the eye one last time. The courtroom hushed as Alana stood up to cross-examine Vance. "Mr. Vance," Alana began, pacing slowly in front of the jury box. "You testified earlier that you felt threatened by me, that I was belligerent." "That's right," Vance said, his voice raspy. "You were aggressive. I followed protocol." "Protocol?" Alana repeated. "Is it protocol to call a suspect Keisha because of her race?" I didn't mean it like that. It was a nickname. Is it protocol to turn off your body camera?" "It malfunctioned," Vance lied. "Interesting," Alana said. She turned to the judge. "Your Honor, the prosecution would like to introduce Exhibit G, the dashcam footage from Mr. Vance's cruiser, the one he forgot to delete because he was too busy laughing at me." Vance froze. He hadn't seen this. He thought it was gone. The giant screens in the courtroom flickered to life. The audio was crisp. The jury watched in stunned silence. They heard Vance mocking Alana. They heard the racial slurs. They heard him explicitly tell Rookie Higgins, "We'll tear it apart. Bet we find a brick of heroin." They heard him admit to manufacturing probable cause. But the nail in the coffin was the video of the arrest. They saw Alana, calm, compliant, respectful, and they saw Vance, violent, aggressive, hateful. When the video ended, the courtroom was so quiet you could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Alana turned back to Vance. "Mr. Vance," she said, her voice low. "On that tape, you asked me a question. You asked, 'Who do you think you are?'" Vance looked down at his hands. "Do you know who I am now?" Alana asked. Vance nodded slowly. "You're the FBI director." No, Alana said. In this courtroom, I'm not the director. I'm just a citizen. I'm the woman you tried to break. I'm the voice of every person you bullied, every person you planted drugs on, every life you ruined because you thought a badge made you a king. She walked back to her table. No further questions, Your Honor. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. When the foreman stood up, he didn't look at Vance. We, the jury, find the defendant, Gregory Vance, guilty on all counts: kidnapping, assault, conspiracy, deprivation of rights under color of law. As the verdict was read, Vance put his head on the table and wept. Not tears of remorse, but tears of self-pity. He finally realized the party was over. The federal courthouse in Alexandria, Virginia, was a monolith of stone and glass, a place where careers went to die. For Officer Greg Vance, it felt less like a court and more like an operating theater where he was being slowly dissected without anesthesia. 6 months had passed since the raid. 6 months of house arrest, shrinking bank accounts, and the slow, agonizing realization that the police union, the brotherhood he had worshipped, had abandoned him. They cut him loose the moment the racketeering charges dropped. He was radioactive. The trial was dubbed United States vs. Vance et al. But everyone in the gallery knew what this really was. It was the predator versus the system. The courtroom was packed to capacity. Reporters from every major network jostled for space in the back rows. Sketch artists scribbled furiously. In the front row, families of previous victims, people Vance had bullied, extorted, or falsely imprisoned over his 15-year career, sat in silent vigil. They were finally seeing the man who had haunted their nightmares brought into the light. Vance sat at the defense table, his cheap polyester suit hanging loosely on his frame. The stress had eaten him alive. His skin was sallow, his eyes darting nervously. He wasn't the strutting peacock of Oak Creek anymore. He was a cornered rat. His lawyer, a court-appointed public defender named Samuel Clien, looked exhausted. Clien had tried to get Vance to plead guilty for a reduced sentence of 15 years. Vance had refused. His ego wouldn't allow it. He still believed he could charm a jury. He still believed that a badge granted him immunity from morality. All rise, the bailiff bellowed. Judge Catherine Halloway swept into the room. She was a woman of terrifying intellect, known in the circuit as the Hammer. She didn't tolerate theatrics, and she despised corruption. "Be seated," she commanded. "We are ready for cross-examination. Mr. Vance, please take the stand." Vance stood up. He smoothed his tie, trying to summon the ghost of his old authority. He walked to the witness box, swore on the Bible, and sat down. He looked at the jury, 12 ordinary citizens. He offered them a small, tight smile. They didn't smile back. Alana Hayes stood up from the prosecution table. She didn't rush. She adjusted the cuffs of her navy blue blazer. She picked up a single file folder. She walked toward the witness stand with the predatory grace of a jungle cat. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't angry. She was surgical. "Mr. Vance," Alana began, her voice echoing in the silent room. "You stated in your direct testimony that on the night of December 14th, you were following your training and protecting your community. Is that correct?" "Yes," Vance said, his voice rasping. He cleared his throat. "Yes, Mum. That area of I-95 is a drug corridor. I saw a suspicious vehicle. I initiated a stop." "Suspicious," Alana repeated, tasting the word. What specifically was suspicious about a 2008 Honda Civic traveling at the speed limit with valid tags? It fit the profile, Vance said. "The profile of what?" Alana pressed. "A drug mule?" "Yes." "Or," Alana said, stepping closer, Did it fit the profile of a target you thought was too poor to fight back? "Objection!" Client shouted. "Argumentative." "Sustained," Judge Holloway said, though her eyes remained fixed on Vance. "Rephrase, Ms. Hayes." Alana didn't blink. "Mr. Vance, let's talk about the smell. You testified under oath that you smelled marijuana coming from the vehicle. You wrote that in your police report. You told Sergeant Miller that in the booking room." "I did," Vance lied smoothly. "It was strong. Maybe you smoked it all before I got there. But the smell was there." Alana smiled. It was a cold, terrifying expression. "Defense Exhibit 4, Alana announced. "The toxicology report from the FBI laboratory. We tested the fabric of the car seats. We tested the air filters. We even tested the hair follicles of the driver." She held up a piece of paper. "Zero traces of cannabis, Mr. Vance. Not in the car. Not in my system. Not even microscopic particulate matter. Were the lab results wrong?" Vance shifted in his seat. "Labs make mistakes." "Maybe," Alana conceded, "but dashcams don't." Vance froze. "Your Honor," Alana said, turning to the bench. "The prosecution would like to play a segment of video evidence that was recovered from the deleted partition of the Oak Creek server hard drive. This is audio from inside Mr. Vance's patrol car, 5 minutes before he pulled me over." Client stood up. "Objection. We haven't seen this." "It was entered into discovery this morning, Counselor," Alana shot back. "Perhaps if your client hadn't tried to erase it, you would have had more time to review it." Judge Holloway nodded. "Play the tape." The courtroom screens flickered to life. The audio hissed, then Vance's voice filled the room. It was loud, boastful, and ugly. Recording. "Vance. Look at this piece of junk coming up. Maryland plates. Probably driving dirty. Higgins, nervous. She's doing 55, Greg. Lane discipline is good. Vance, doesn't matter. Look at the driver. Hoodie, messy hair. That's a contempt of cop waiting to happen. Watch this. I'm gonna light her up. Bet she has cash. If not, we'll make sure she has something else." The audio cut out. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. You could hear the hum of the ventilation system. The jury looked from the screen to Vance with expressions of pure disgust. Alana leaned against the railing of the witness box. "We'll make sure she has something else," Alana quoted softly. "What did you mean by that, Mr. Vance? Were you planning to plant evidence? Like the bag of cocaine we found in your locker?" "I never—" Vance started, sweat beading on his forehead. "We have Rookie Higgins's testimony," Alana suddenly shouted, her voice booming, shattering Vance's composure. "We have the stash house. We have the ledger. We know you weren't protecting the community, Mr. Vance. You were hunting it," Vance snapped. His face turned red. He stood up in the witness box, pointing a shaking finger at Alana. "You tricked me!" he screamed, his voice cracking. "You set me up! You came into my town, looking like a bum, looking for trouble. You entrapped me." "I drove a car," Alana said, her voice dropping back to a lethal whisper. "I wore a hoodie. If that is all it takes to entrap you into destroying a citizen's life, then you are not an officer of the law. You are a criminal with a badge." She turned her back on him. "No further questions, Your Honor." Vance stood there, panting, realizing too late what he had done. He had just confessed to the jury that he targeted her based on appearance. He looked at his lawyer. Client had his head in his hands. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, the foreman, a middle-aged schoolteacher, refused to look Vance in the eye. "Will the defendant please rise?" Judge Holloway commanded. Vance stood up. His legs felt like water. "Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?" "We have, Your Honor. On count 1, conspiracy to violate civil rights. Guilty. On count 2, kidnapping. Guilty. On count 3, wire fraud. Guilty." On count 4, possession of narcotics with intent to distribute? Guilty. The word rang out like a bell tolling a funeral. Guilty, 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 on all 24 counts. Vance collapsed into his chair. He didn't cry. He just stared at the table, his mind unable to process the magnitude of the collapse. Judge Holloway didn't wait. Mr. Vance, you have shown zero remorse. You have blamed your victim, your partner, and the system. You are a disgrace to the uniform you wore. She took off her glasses. Under the federal sentencing guidelines, given the abuse of power and the volume of drugs involved in your ring, there is a mandatory minimum. But I am going beyond that. I sentence you to 45 years in the Federal Bureau of Prisons. You will be remanded to custody immediately. The gavel banged. It sounded like a gunshot. 45 years, Vance whispered. He would be 85 if he ever got out. He was dead. His life was over. Marshals moved in. They didn't use the polite, gentle grip they used for white-collar criminals. They grabbed Vance's arms and wrenched them behind his back. The handcuffs clicked, tight, just the way he liked to do it to others. "Let's go, inmate," the marshal grunted. As he was dragged out of the courtroom, Vance looked back. He saw Alana Hayes gathering her files. She didn't look back at him. He wasn't worth her time anymore. 2 weeks later, the reality of hard karma truly arrived. USP McCreary was a high-security federal penitentiary in Kentucky. It was grey, cold, and smelled of industrial cleaner and unwashed bodies. It was known as the Rock of the Mountains. Greg Vance was processed in as inmate Inaka 4922VA, ironically, the same number as his badge. He was stripped of his suit. He was sprayed for lice. He was given a used orange jumpsuit that was 2 sizes too big. He was given a thin mattress and a plastic bin for his possessions. He was placed in general population. Usually, cops are placed in protective custody, PC. But the nature of Vance's crimes, running a drug ring, stealing from the evidence locker, meant the Aryan Brotherhood and other gangs had no love for him either. And because he was arrogant, he had alienated the guards during processing. He was alone. It was yard time on his 3rd day. Vance walked the perimeter of the chain-link fence, keeping his head down. The sky was overcast. The air was thick with tension. He could feel eyes on him. "Hey, officer!" The voice was gravelly. Vance froze. He turned slowly. 3 men were approaching him. They weren't huge, muscular monsters. They were lean, wiry, with eyes that looked dead. The leader was a man named Marcus. Vance remembered Marcus. Marcus was a mechanic from Oak Creek. Vance had arrested him 4 years ago for a busted taillight, escalated it to a search, planted a baggie of meth, and seized Marcus's tow truck. Marcus had lost his business, his wife, and 5 years of his life. Marcus smiled. It was a terrifying sight. "I heard you were coming," Marcus said, stopping 5 feet away. "News travels fast." "Stay back," Vance stammered, looking around for a guard. The tower guard was watching, but he didn't seem in a hurry to intervene. "You remember my truck, Greg?" Marcus asked softly. "You remember how you laughed when I told you it was my livelihood? You said, 'Get a real job.' I was just doing—" "Don't say it," Marcus hissed. "Don't you say you were doing your job." Marcus took a step closer. "You took everything from me," Marcus whispered. "But the funny thing is, Greg, in here, we're equals. Actually, that's not true. In here, I have friends. You have nobody." Marcus didn't hit him. He didn't have to. He simply leaned in and whispered 3 words. "Watch your back." Marcus turned and walked away. Vance stood there, shaking. He looked up at the grey sky. A single tear rolled down his cheek. He realized with absolute clarity that this fear, this constant, gnawing terror in the pit of his stomach, was exactly what he had inflicted on thousands of people. He was going to feel this fear every hour of every day for the next 45 years. Karma hadn't just hit him. It had swallowed him whole. 3 months later, the rain was falling in Washington, D.C., tapping gently against the bulletproof glass of the director's office on the 7th floor of the J. Edgar Hoover building. Alana Hayes sat at her mahogany desk, reviewing a classified briefing. The Oak Creek corruption case was officially closed. The town's police force had been dissolved and reconstituted under the supervision of the Virginia State Police. Mayor Sterling was serving 15 years. The asset forfeiture laws in the state were being rewritten because of her case. There was a knock on the door. Deputy Director David Ross entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," Ross said, setting a cup down. "You've been staring at that file for an hour. The Vance case is over, Alana. You won. You can relax." Alana took the coffee, wrapping her hands around the warmth. She looked out at the city skyline, the monuments glowing in the distance. "I'm not staring at the Vance file," Alana said. She turned the folder around. It was a new dossier. It detailed a sheriff's department in rural Nevada that had been systematically extorting tourists. "There's always another one, David," Alana said, her eyes sharp and determined. "Another Vance, another Sterling, another bully who thinks a badge is a crown." "So what's the plan?" Ross asked, leaning against the doorframe with a smirk. "Sending in a tactical team? Subpoenas?" Alana stood up. She walked over to the coat rack. Instead of grabbing her suit jacket, she reached for a battered denim jacket and a pair of worn-out sunglasses. "No," Alana said, putting on the jacket. She transformed instantly. The posture of the director vanished, replaced by the loose, casual stance of a drifter. "They won't see a tactical team coming," Alana said, checking her reflection. "They'll just see a woman alone on the highway. A target." She grabbed a set of keys to a dusty, beat-up pickup truck this time. "They'll laugh at me," Alana said, a dangerous smile playing on her lips. "And then I'll teach them why you should never laugh at the law." She walked past Ross, heading for the elevator. "Keep the coffee warm, David. I'll be back in a few days." The elevator doors closed, shutting out the director and unleashing the wolf once again. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of Officer Greg Vance. He spent years thinking he was the hunter, only to find out he was just a guest in the lion's den. It's a brutal lesson in karma. When you abuse power, you don't just break the law, you break the trust of the people you're sworn to protect. And eventually, that broken trust comes back to haunt you. Vance lost his freedom, his dignity, and his future, all because he couldn't see past his own prejudice and ego. Alana Hayes proved that the strongest weapon isn't a gun or a badge. It's the truth. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next story. We have a crazy one coming up next week about a CEO who fires the wrong janitor. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, stay kind, and remember, you never know who you're talking to.